Hi, this is Deidre, and you may have seen my prior 2 installments of this Cheating Death series. And a little bit about me if you did not. Again, I am an author, very spiritual, always been spiritual my whole life. I've had precognitive dreams, experienced telepathy, vision, past life memories. I'm an empath. I'm just very spiritual. Anyway, sometimes we notice that certain people are considered lucky unlucky. Like things happen to them and you're wondering, oh my God, something happened to them again? But then you have those who are lucky unlucky and you say, oh my gosh, they got saved again, or nothing happened to them again. So things like that have happened to me where I don't know, some people call it brushes with death, some people just call it flukes. you know Something could have happened but it didn't happen. Unexplained coincidences. Your guardian angel was looking out for you. You must have had somebody really praying for you. Some people wouldn't even call these things that I'm describing about myself brushes with death. Some people would only consider a brush with death like you're hanging off of a cliff and, somebody pulled you up by a rope. I don't know. But, there's the potential in everything. So the next thing that happened to me, this is the third thing that happened as a child. So from this point, we had moved, my family and I had moved from the apartment where we were. And if you didn't see the videos before, I was born in New York. We moved from there to Georgia to Florida. So anyhow, we moved out of the apartment and into a single family home. It was a house with 3 bedrooms and a living room, a dining room, a den, 2 bathrooms, 2 full bathrooms, and a huge yard, And this is Florida with, you got your palm trees and all that. So we lived on a corner unit, corner house, or corner lot, as they say. And it was just an average middle-class neighborhood in Florida. And at the time that this happened, I believe I was 11. Oh my God. To this day, I don't remember if it was 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. But I believe I must have been 11 because my parents had gone out. They never left us home during the night. We had been left home during the day because, we were very responsible and, we would come home from school and let ourselves in. We had our own keys and, it's no big deal. Lots of kids did it back then. Okay. So anyway, but this particular night, my parents were out, and it was, I think they left us around, maybe, I want to say 7 p.m. or something like that. But anyway, it was dark at the time. So the only reason they went out is because they went to look for a house to buy. Because this house that we were living in at the time, my parents were renting it. And they went out to look for a house to buy. I guess they didn't want the kids there to mess things up. I don't know, whatever. We were always prim and proper kids, and but maybe they just wanted to get things done quickly, so they left us at home that night. And it was pretty much bedtime for us anyway. I know my bedtime back then was 8:30, so I had to be in bed by 8:30. But anyway, it had gotten a little late, so being that my parents weren't, our parents weren't there, we were up a little late. So my now I have an older brother who is he's like almost 3 years older than I. Well, anyway, um, he and I got along, except we would argue every day. So every day, every day there is an argument. But that's how brothers and sisters usually are. It's nothing out of the ordinary. So anyway, uh, I decided that I was going to take a shower and go to bed. So I remember I was in the living room, and the way that our house was, you came in, there was a carport. The carport was in place of a garage, but a carport is like an open garage, so you could see it. You could see in it. And then you go in the gate, and then there's a front door. The front door leads into the den with the fireplace and everything, and then you go up a couple steps or a step, and then there's the formal living room, and then next to that is the formal dining room, and then you can go from the formal dining room into the kitchen, and then through the kitchen you can go through the hallway, or you can go through the living room, and there's a door there, and then you can go into the hallway, and the hallway leads to the bedrooms and the bathrooms, etc. So anyway, I was about to make my way through the living room into, through the doors to go and get ready to take my shower, and the phone rang. So now this is just how you can see how one thing causes, like a ripple effect, like a domino effect. So normally at that time the phone wouldn't ring, but the phone rang, and it was some family from out of state calling. And I guess if it was family locally, I probably would have just gone and taken my shower. But back then, if you called from another state, you're calling long distance. So the person is paying for the call. Or if they call collect, then you're paying for the call. But these family members, they always called and paid for the call themselves. So anyway, I knew that I needed to take the call. Couldn't just let them call and, don't take the call or whatever. So my older brother answered the phone. And I really wanted to just go and take my shower and go to sleep and just, get it over with. So he talked for a minute, and then he passed the phone on to me real quick, I think. And then after that, somehow, I don't know how, but we got into like a tiff, like an argument. I don't know. I don't even know about what, for what, how, why, what, when. I don't even know. But, and don't ask me why I did this, but I had white socks on. I remember that much. I didn't have slippers on or anything like that. I just had white socks on and my clothes. And I decided, I don't know to this day why I did this, but instead of going to take my shower, I decided to get away from him and step outside into the yard. It was a gated yard, it wasn't like unsafe or anything. But I decided to step out of the house for a minute to clear my head and just to let him cool off, whatever, and just let the argument die down. And the funniest thing, he locked me out. So I don't know why I didn't panic right away, but I wanted to get in. Plus it was dark out, and it was late, so there was no reason for me to be out of the house. And I guess it wasn't really a big deal, but I only had my socks on. I didn't have any shoes on, and plus I shouldn't be outside of the house at that time. So he locked me out, and so I start banging on the front door for him to let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in. And he still didn't let me in. A long time he didn't let me in. So I went out of the gate, around to the carport, and again, the room that is attached to the entrance is the den. And the den had these windows all along the side, like all along the side, like window, 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 all along the side, like a bunch of windows, and like short windows, and like about, I don't know, 20 inches tall or something. I don't know. So, but I didn't realize how thin these windows were. Anyway, so I went around, and I was very skinny. I was very thin. I didn't call myself. Actually, back then I didn't even like to use the word skinny, but you know, now I'm older, it doesn't bother me. But at the time, you know, so I was very thin back then, but I was very strong. So I had a lot of power in my arms. So anyway, and legs and everything else. So anyway, I went around to the carport, and I start banging on the window for him to let me in. He did not let me in. So finally I banged again. I took my right hand, banged on the window. My hand went, my fist and my arm went through the window, and nothing happened to my right hand that I you know, banged on the window with and broke the window with, accidentally, of course. But some glass flew out, and I didn't even feel anything. But what happened was the glass flew into my wrist, and I'll show you. I actually have a scar. I don't know if you can see the scar now, but anyway, I have a scar. They have two scars there. Now, back then, since I was shorter, the scar that I ended up with was longer on my arm because I was shorter, so my arm was shorter. So the scar looked longer. Now I'm, you know, older, so the scar looks shorter. But anyway, scars. So anyway, I didn't feel the glass fly out or anything. I felt nothing. It wasn't until I looked down that I actually saw all this blood coming from my wrist. So seeing the blood, it's not that the blood scared me, but what scared me was the fact that I was bleeding. You know, not that blood necessarily scared me, but so anyway, what I didn't realize was that my brother had come to the window while I was banging, and when my fist flew through the window, a little bit of glass actually got into his chest because he had his shirt off. And so by that time, mind you, I don't have my shoes on, I'm outside, I'm locked out, and I have on white socks, so I'm guessing that probably ended up with blood on my socks too, I'm not sure. But anyway, so at that time I'm panicking. Back then we didn't have cell phones, you know, I couldn't just like go through my pocket and, you know, hi mom, hi dad, I'm bleeding here, can you help me? You know, no, that didn't, wasn't like that. So what I did was I eventually went to the neighbor. So I went to the neighbor. If I'm looking out, the neighbor was on my right, and I went there and I knocked on that door. There weren't any children. I don't think there were any kids who lived there, and if there were, they're probably like really young, because I know if they were my age, I would have been playing with them every day. So I knocked on the door, and a lady came out, and she welcomed me in, and she looked and saw my, you know, wrist, and, you know, she wasn't panicking or anything, but she, you know, she was very willing to help me, and she brought me into the kitchen and sat me down at the table, and she actually went, let me see, I think it was either she went to get another neighbor who lived cat a corner from us, or that neighbor was already at her house and she just told me that she lived across the street there. But anyway, one of the ladies was a nurse, and I believe the nurse was the one who lived in the house where, you know, where I knocked. I think she was the nurse. So she said, you know, she said, I'm a nurse. Lucky me. She's a nurse. What are the odds, right? So anyway, somehow they eventually got in touch with my parents. I don't really know how that all went down because I was just, I was wondering if I don't know, I guess I was wondering if I was going to bleed to death or something. I don't know. I wasn't really panicking, but at the same time, I was concerned. I was, wondering what's going to happen to me because I had never had anything like that happen before. I've had cuts and bruises and things. Of course, I was a very active kid, playing on the playground and things like that. So of course, when you're like that, you're going to fall down and get little cuts and things. But I'd never had that much blood coming out of a wound. So, they wrapped me up and everything, and eventually they got me to the hospital. And my parents eventually showed up at the hospital, I guess once they were able to, get in contact with them, or they came home, or I don't know how that all went. But I remember I was in the doctor's office. He pulls out, he has my arm hanging out like this, hanging down. And back, of course, I was young, so I was a nice little skinny arm, a little arm. And we're talking a really skinny arm, like little arm. And so he says to me, finally, because my parents came. My dad, he was in a good mood, but my mother was looking like, I mean, you could see almost steam coming out of her ears and her nose and everywhere else. That head was definitely steaming. So she was definitely mad at me. I don't know why she was mad at me, because I'm not the one. I didn't do it on purpose. Anyway, she was mad. I guess she was mad because, whatever we did, we messed up the whole night, and I guess they weren't expecting all of that drama, and I could understand why, a parent would be upset, but at the same time, I'm bleeding, my arm is bleeding, so I would have expected a little bit more sympathy. But anyway, so the doctor, he tells me, he says, "You lucked out." And I never heard that term before. So I was like, lucked out, So I was like, what does that mean? He's like, "You lucked out. You're gonna live," or whatever he said. And he said, had that cut been a millimeter, he actually said a millimeter closer, I would have been dead. That's what he said. He said, "You missed it by literally a millimeter." So anyway, what they did was, I couldn't watch what he was doing, but he had my arm out and he pulled out a tendon. And if you don't know what a tendon is, Tendon, Tendon, look it up. He pulled out a tendon. So just imagine a vein. It wasn't a vein, but tendons run alongside the veins in the arm. So he pulled that out. He said, "You lost a tendon, but you're going to live," or whatever he said. Can't remember his exact words. But I do remember him saying, "You lucked out." And when he said "you lucked out," I was thinking that was something bad. So, so he basically told me, that had the glass cut me a millimeter closer to the artery or whatever it was. Now I know artery, but that I would have been dead. So I guess that's my, my third brush with death. So wild. So anyway, so after that, I did learn that my brother was roaming the neighborhood looking for me. He didn't know where I was. I guess he didn't know because I had gone to the neighbor's house. And so I guess there was some sort of compassion or worry, or I don't know what. Maybe he was scared. But anyway, so that's what happened. And it was a close call. And things could have gone a lot worse, and they didn't. So I believe in that instance, something or someone saved me again. And, I guess it was foolish to go out of the house, even though I never thought I was going to get locked out of my own house. But you live and you learn. And so anyway, I don't know if anybody else has experienced anything similar to that. I know people experience things like that every day, where things could be just on the verge, of something terrible happening, and just something small saves you. And then other people are not so fortunate, I guess you can call it fortunate, and just that one little millimeter, it could be somebody else, and they end up dying, because the glass or whatever it was cut them too close and they didn't make it. So, I do believe that that instance was actually an instance where I cheated death. So no one knows why these things happen. You don't know why you're saved for your parents' sake, for your other from family members' sakes, for your own sake, if you have something special to do in life, or something you have to learn, or something that you have to go through, or whatever. Who knows? Nobody knows for sure. I don't know for sure. But I do know that that was my third encounter. So if you liked, please subscribe and like, and I will see you in the next video. There is actually a fourth one, and this one happens much later on in life, and I will see you in the next video.